This is the CBS Evening News. Dan Rather reporting tonight from Washington. Good evening. President Bush tonight will stand and deliver to a joint meeting of Congress and the nation a $1 trillion budget, his first federal budget proposals. Among them, defense spending would increase by the inflation rate next year. The budget deficit, Mr. Bush claims, will be cut to $91 billion. Democrats who doubt that will have a formal response to the broadcast after President Bush speaks. Many in Congress and elsewhere doubt that President Bush can deliver on his campaign promises for vastly improved quality of life programs, at the same time reducing the huge federal deficit, and stick to his
dollars out of Medicare.
to $91 billion. Democrats who doubt that will have a formal response to the broadcast after President Bush speaks. Many in Congress and elsewhere doubt that President Bush can deliver on his campaign promises for vastly improved quality of life programs, at the same time reducing the huge federal deficit, and stick to his no new taxes pledge. CBS News White House correspondent Leslie Stahl begins our advance look at Bush, the budget, the Congress, and your tax money.
President Bush will keep his big promise, no new taxes, and he'll take a stab at keeping the kinder, gentler promises, just slightly increasing spending for education, the environment, daycare, and drugs. But he'll also do what Democrats warned him not to. He'll avoid specifics on which program should be cut in order to pay for those increases. He wants to negotiate those cuts with Congress.
Why don't we sit down together, closed room, and let's bargain without any one of us sticking our necks out first and the other one chopping it off. And that's a good way to go about it.
What he's essentially saying is, here's all the good things, but the tough choices now I want to work out with the Congress so that we share the unpopularity of having to tell the American people where the sacrifices have to be made. It's a good strategy from a political point of view, but it's not good leadership in terms of dealing with the budget.
In order to reduce the deficit to the targets of the Graham-Rudman Act, Mr. Bush will keep many of the cuts in the Reagan budget. For instance, $5 billion out of Medicare, $2 billion out of farm subsidies. One change, he's asking for $2 billion less than Mr. Reagan did for military spending. Another change, bound to be controversial, a big proposed cut in the capital gains tax, which Mr. Bush claims will actually increase revenue. Democrats not only dispute that, they say it's a tax break for the rich.
I'm not about to tell the wage earners in Chicago that they should pay a higher tax rate than the stockbrokers.
The president may achieve his long-sought bipartisanship on this one. Even Republicans oppose it.
I realize it would change tax reform, and I don't like that.
Despite the problems, the president may yet find a spirit of goodwill from Congress tonight.
Our image is not exactly all that good these days after the pay raise fiasco, so we'll subdue it. I mean, we aren't feeling quite as aggressive as might otherwise be the case, and I think he'll be well received.
But the president must persuade Wall Street that his claim to produce a budget surplus in just 4 years is based on credible assumptions. And he'll have to talk Congress into negotiating over those budget cuts. Right now, there is no agreement for such a process. Leslie Stahl, CBS News, the White House.
Even at his swearing in, President Bush talked about government spending.
We have a deficit to bring down. We have more will than wallet, but will is what we need.
But many economists say the government's already straining the current budget, with federal spending increasing at a rapid 10% annual rate.
Federal spending here in 1989 is just outrageous. It's unfortunate, but it clearly is way out of line with what it should be.
That spending is pushing up the deficit. In its first estimate, the government said the current budget would be at $129.5 billion in the red. Later, an update, $145.5 billion. Finally, just last month, another estimate, the government's $165.5 billion over budget. One problem, say some experts, is that federal budgets seldom face up to the hard realities. Perhaps worried about voter reaction, they make the economic future look overly bright.
I do think it's playing politics with budget numbers, and that nobody really believes that those numbers are going to come true.
When the government spends more than it's budgeted, it's got to borrow to make up the difference. Then it's got to pay interest on that borrowing, pushing itself even deeper into debt. Interest is now the third highest cost in the massive federal budget. Experts disagree on how important all this is.
I think the doomsayers about the deficit are completely wrong, and they have been wrong for the past 6 or 7 years.
It's no different in a sense than if you borrow a lot of money, spend it, and instead of leaving your estate to your kids, you leave your debt to your kids.
So all Americans have a stake in the budget President Bush presents tonight. Ray Brady, CBS News, New York.
Bush administration court actions again put a stop today to the Oliver North criminal conspiracy, corruption, and cover-up trial, just as the jury was seated. Under Attorney General Richard Thornburg, Justice Department lawyers are trying to impose still more last-minute restrictions on what evidence the jury can hear in the Weapons for Iran, What Happened to the Money case. Refusal by the Reagan-Bush administration weeks ago to supply certain documents has already forced the dropping of some of the most serious charges against North. CBS News law correspondent Rita Braver reports on what happened today and what's likely to happen just ahead.
The Bush administration's last-minute attempts to severely restrict Oliver North's use of classified information in his defense were rejected by 2 federal courts today. It happened this way. Over the objections of independent counsel attorneys, Justice Department lawyers asked Judge Gerhardt Gesell to order North not to disclose any secret information without specific permission from the administration. But the judge, the independent counsel, and North's attorneys all warned that plan would cause the trial to hopelessly bog down and perhaps even force dismissal of the case. Still, the Justice Department objected.
We would not have any assurance that there would be a controlled and authorized disclosure of very sensitive classified information. It would be a complete crapshoot.
But Judge Gesell has already put strict limits on what classified material North could use, and he refused to go along with the Justice Department's extra demands. In fact, the judge said the administration had no right to interfere in the independent counsel's prosecution of North. The judge called the administration's efforts belated, wholly misplaced, and frivolous. Late today, a federal appeals court panel agreed.
In national security cases, you always have the intelligence community trying to protect the information. That's their job. That's their appropriate role. There's always a tension between that role and prosecuting the case and using the information.
Judge Gesell sent the newly selected jury of 9 men and 3 women home until Monday, when he hopes to begin the trial. But the shouting's not over yet. The Justice Department tonight says it will keep appealing even all the way to the Supreme Court, Dan.
And what happens if the Supreme Court finally turns down their appeal?
Well, the only thing really that the Attorney General will be able to do at that point is to ask for the charges to be dropped before the trial even starts. And there's some people in the independent counsel's office who believe that may in fact happen.
Rita Braver, thanks.
Thanks.
And still to come on tonight's CBS Evening News from Washington, Bob Schieffer on Tower's fight to save his reputation and nomination. And correspondent Eric Ingberg with snapshots of America at the beginning of a new administration.
It's an amazing thing. Hallmark is offering an empty little red box, an empty little cardboard box for Valentine's Day. And people are excited and they're buzzing about it. A little cardboard empty thing. 0 things are in there. No things, nothing. What a crazy world. Do we need further proof? Oh, forgot to tell you. The little red box comes connected to this cuddly bear. $3.50 with any $10 Hallmark purchase. But the box is empty. You have to fill it. Crazy world, crazy world.
Do it yourself. Do it for yourself. Do yourself proud with Minwax and Wood. Get a beautiful color that's like no other.
With Minwax Wood Finish to highlight the grain.
And for lasting protection, it's absolute perfection.
Top it with fast-drying Minwax polyurethane.
It's easy, nothing to it. You can do it. You can do it. Do yourself proud with Minwax and Wood.
Meeting your new daughter-in-law.
Uh-huh.
With dirty dentures?
I just soaked them.
Soaking's not enough. Denture Cream cleans almost twice as clean as effort into 90 seconds.
Twice as clean.
Brush with denture cream or minty denture gel.
When Mom gets a cough and cold, everyone suffers.
Mom, Dad's ironing.
Time to doctor that cough with Robitussin.
Look, Mom's feeling better.
Robitussin, recommended by more doctors, pharmacists, and Dr. Mom.
Supporters of the John Tower for Defense nomination from President Bush right on down today were trying to demonstrate resolve. Resolve that Tower and they intend to hang in, hang on, fight to the finish, never give in. They did so amid indications that an up or down confirmation vote by the Senate is still possibly weeks away. CBS News Chief Washington correspondent Bob Schieffer is tracking the latest orchestrated leaks of accusations against Tower and the fight to keep the Tower nomination from toppling.
In an obvious show of support, the president seated John Tower at the cabinet table today, just as if he'd already been confirmed.
The presence of Senator Tower mean that you think he will be confirmed, Mr. President?
Ground rules of this is a photo opportunity.
But while Bush was standing by his embattled nominee, it is a set of allegations discovered by White House lawyers that has caused the latest snag in getting Tower confirmed. White House counsel Boyd and Gray went to the Capitol last night. He told senators it might take 2 weeks to check out new questions about Tower's past associations with defense contractors, some of whom are being probed as part of the Pentagon bribery investigation. Tower's relationship with the contractors got extensive attention during his confirmation hearings, but some senators seemed unsure then whether they were getting the full story. In one case, Tower was asked why he hadn't informed the committee of his considerable earnings from one foreign contractor.
I don't believe you gave us the figure for British Aerospace.
I didn't because they are not, British Aerospace Inc. is not a defense contractor.
In the months before he was being considered for defense secretary, Tower took a different line. Records show that when he registered as a lobbyist for British Aerospace, he listed its business as just that, defense contracting. And indeed, the company did $110 million in Pentagon business over the last 2 years.
Storm warnings also went up on another front as Armed Services Chairman Sam Nunn expressed increasing frustration with the way the White House is handling the nomination. Nunn said at the same moment White House lawyers were telling him they wanted more time to check the latest allegations, other White House officials were criticizing the Armed Services Committee for dragging out the investigation.
Dan. Bob, thanks. And I'll be back with more news, including the snow in California, after this.
It's Color Tile's International Design 89 sale. Save up to 40% on the world's newest tile looks. This Mediterranean floor tile now only $139. This Venetian wall tile now $229. Imported patterns and florals starting at just 69 cents. And Color Tile's exclusive stone look vinyl tile only $199. International Design 89 sale. Only through Sunday and only at Color Tile. Come now and bring the beauty home.
Is this any way to spend a weekend? Get away to Marriott's 2 for Breakfast weekend, where you can be alone, together, relax by the pool, or try our fitness room, dine and dance the night away. Through April 1st, just $59 to $89 per night, not per person, depending on location. A hearty breakfast for 2 is included. Marriott's 2 for Breakfast weekend from $59 to $89. Call 1-800-USA-WKND.
Shredded wheat?
I need my nutrition.
You'll need 12 boxes to equal the vitamin and mineral nutrition in just 1 box of total. That's more nutrition than any other cereal.
That's more like it. 1 box, 1 bowl, 1 spoon.
There are headaches.
And the car payment is overdue.
And headaches. There's aspirin. And Anacin. The Anacin aspirin formula relieves headaches better than regular aspirin.
Feeling better, hun?
Not just better, better. Anacin. Better relief.
While temperatures climbed in some areas today, Alaska's Arctic storm continued roaming through much of the lower 48, including here in Washington, D.C. There was more rare snow for Southern California, sub-zero cold, winds, and heavy snow for Michigan. It's the kind of weather some critics call bad. But as Frank Courier reports, there are plenty of people who understand that it's an ill wind chill that blows no good.
Conquering the cold, from Coast Guard cutters plowing over ice jams on the Great Lakes to the hardy souls with rubber suits and surfboards on Lake Michigan. Many Midwesterners are conquering instead of cursing the winter of '89.
Just like putting on your pants, you grab your snow scoop and you shovel your driveway so you can get to work.
And they're cashing in as the mercury plunges. Cold weather research in the upper Midwest is now a $50 million a year industry as companies and labs test new products outdoors.
Our season is somewhat extended, and as long as it is, we try to capitalize on that.
The commercial conquering of the cold began 25 years ago in an experiment involving a little town and a tire maker.
This is Fraser, Colorado. The weather's still bad, but the driving's a lot better since Goodyear put new safety spike tires on every wheel of every car in Fraser.
Today, on Michigan's Keweenaw Peninsula, where it snows 200 inches a year and piles up high as a house, the Snow Research Institute has made a science out of studying winter under a microscope to help solve the mysteries of snow control.
Anyone who lives in northern climates realizes that you've got to be able to move the snow. You've got to be able to work with the snow.
The Institute tests everything from truck tires to no-lock brakes and military tanks for the U.S. Army. They charge over snowbanks in personnel carriers and jam the brakes on 50 tons of armor to test traction on sheer ice.
Wars don't end when the snow falls.
In nearby Duluth, where winter highs average 4.5 degrees, scientists on Lake Superior test the human response to the most frigid extremes.
1, 2, 3, go.
People who do die rapidly in the cold probably die from the shock, the initial shock.
At the University of Minnesota's hypothermia lab, researchers study the impact of fear and panic on people faced with freezing to death. Volunteers in a tank are monitored.
I feel out of breath. I feel the water seeping into the suit and numbing my body as it goes.
It's the fear and agony of freezing alone that's helped advertisers cash in on the winter of '89.
You may not have thought of buying a Sears Die-Hard battery until you've had a little time alone to think about it.
But dead batteries and sore backs are for old-timers like Ray Lindgren the euphoria of February.
I could be living down south somewhere, but I'd miss this. That's a fact.
Fact is, winter is a booming business. But in the state of Michigan or Minnesota, conquering the cold may be more a state of mind. Frank Courier, CBS News, Duluth.
When we go on vacation, I take a bottle with me. If his back acts up, I know Metaprin's definitely going to work.
I'm a 5th grade teacher, which means big headaches, which means Metaprin.
Metaprin has ibuprofen, and nothing's proven faster.
Metaprin really works.
When the pain gets tough, get Metaprin.
We've studied your mouth from every angle and created a toothbrush with a very special angle, the Reach toothbrush, with a dental angle designed to clean even back teeth better, to get your teeth 51% cleaner than the other leading brush. Reach for 51% cleaner teeth.
Attention shredded wheat eaters, you've been missing something. Taste, but no more. Kellogg's Squares brings you that superlative shredded wheat nutrition with no salt, no fat, no cholesterol. But wait, Kellogg's Squares gives you free in every bite. Taste. Sweet, delectable fruit in the middle. You might never eat plain old shredded wheat again. Kellogg's Squares, shredded wheat with taste. Free in every bite. And speaking of taste, now Squares have 35% more raisin. Great taste. Free.
Red Lobster presents the Lobster and Shrimp Combination Celebration. Two celebrated tastes, lobster and shrimp together. It's tender grilled shrimp. It's luscious rock lobster, langostinos that sizzle, shrimp scampi, and more. A celebration of 6 lobster and shrimp platters starting at just $7.95. Kids shrimp dinner, $1.95. Join the Lobster and Shrimp Combination Celebration at Red Lobster now. And get a ½ pound of snow crab legs for just $3.95 with any entree.
Hundreds of thousands of people voted today in Jamaica, despite shootings and stabbings and charges of election fraud. Opposition leader Michael Manley got into a scuffle when he went out to check the voting in a stronghold of his opponent, Prime Minister Edward Seaga. No one was hurt in that incident, but elsewhere at least one person was killed, bringing the toll to 12 since the Jamaican election campaign began. Manley, a sometime friend of Fidel Castro, was leading in pre-election polls over Seaga. First returns are expected later tonight. Moscow said today one Soviet soldier was killed when Afghan rebels shelled a convoy retreating from Kabul. From Moscow now, Anthony Mason reports on the bitter end of the Soviets' Afghan invasion.
The memorial to Soviet soldiers who died in Afghanistan is set in a distant corner of a Moscow park. On a cold winter's day, it sits unnoticed. But from its undistinguished shape, you can sense this nation's uncertainty about a long and painful war. Mama, I won't describe everything. It's not for you, Volodya Korkov wrote home in 1980. The guys noticed I was bloody, but it was nothing. I will heal. After 8 years, Volodya still has psychological scars. He meets every week with a group of Afghan veterans to talk over their troubles. The first year, I had nightmares, Volodya remembers. I jerked in my sleep. You still do, his wife breaks in. I have the same dream all the time, says Alexei. I find myself alone in camp with the Afghan rebels coming towards me. I wake up in a cold sweat. As more and more soldiers have come home with these stories, Soviets have slowly realized they've paid too high a price.
We shouldn't have done it. Definitely. Absolutely.
I was hit by a mortar from behind, Nikolai Chubanov remembers. When I looked back, my leg was at a 90-degree angle. Nikolai lost his leg in Afghanistan. When he came home, the government fitted him with a crude prosthesis, and he hobbled in pain for 8 years. Recently, he was fitted for a new artificial leg at a small independent clinic. Before, I could hear my leg squeak, he says. Now I can dance. Nikolai has finally found peace at home. But Svetlana Vasilyeva's son will never return. Alosha was 19 when he was killed in 1985. He was our only child, she says. We planned everything for him. Now he's not here. My life no longer has any meaning. Svetlana and her husband asked to be part of Volodya's group to try to understand what their son experienced in the war. They don't need me, Svetlana insists, but I need them. Even though so many families have sacrificed so much, they're reluctant to conclude it was completely in vain.
It's very hard to say that it was all in vain, that we shouldn't have done it, just because right now our boys are dying in Afghanistan. Imagine this guy going to a battle knowing that it's in vain and probably he'll die. I mean, this is an extremely tragic situation.
In his closet, Volodya Korkov still keeps the uniform he wore in Afghanistan and the medals he was given when he left. But amongst his friends now, he offers this toast. Let us meet more often around tables like this, instead of on battlefields. Anthony Mason, CBS News, Moscow.
A recent test compared the Toyota Tercel stick shift, the Hyundai Excel stick shift, and the Subaru Justy Automatic. But we made it just a little tougher on the Justy, because you don't have to shift the Justy. And its incredible ECVT automatic makes it accelerate and pass quicker than the Hyundai and the Toyota. Proof that Subaru can beat the competition with one arm and one leg tied behind its back.
Great news. I don't need surgery for my hemorrhoids. The doctor said they're not that serious. He said use Preparation H.
Preparation H helps shrink swelling of tissues as it often relieves pain and itching for hours. Preparation H, also in new cream.
Oh, no, not you again. Mom, coming.
New Sanaflush Thick Liquid Bowl Cleaner sprays up to disinfect hard-to-reach places. It's thicker to cling longer, clean stains harder than ever. Sanaflush takes the beast out of your bowl.
A lot of people can't wait until they retire. But I always liked my work. It worried me that when I turned 65, I'd have to leave. Rules are rules, and that was company policy. Then AARP helped get mandatory retirement eliminated. Now I can retire when I want to retire.
Bye, dear.
Not when someone else wants me to.
AARP, making a difference.
We wanted to try to give you some context, some perspective as President Bush sets out the programs and priorities defining his view of government tonight. So we have the results of a new CBS News poll. The view of what government priorities should be as seen by almost 1,500 Americans we polled. 57% indicate the government should do more to help working people, from daycare to college to nursing homes. Eric Ingberg has more on what the governed are saying about government.
Susan Morrissey and her husband Jake working on dinner for the kids in their Maryland home after both have worked all day at their jobs. Not the breadwinning dad, housekeeping mom Americans used to see as typical. But a snapshot of the new American family shows how much has changed in just a few years. A CBS News poll conducted between February 2nd and 5th found that in about half the marriages today, both spouses are working. Significantly, 2/3 of those we polled say the reason both work is because they have to, not because they want to.
If they want to maintain a higher standard of living, for most families, this requires 2 earners.
Susan Morrissey went back to teaching, even though it meant finding someone to take care of her 2 daughters.
We just made the minimum down payment on the house. We had 2 cars, actually, to pay for. We had a child on the way, so things were tough.
The new American family has new style problems, new demands of its government.
I think it's very difficult, especially in the case of an infant, to find daycare. It just doesn't seem to be available anywhere.
55% of the people we polled say the government should help people who can't afford daycare. Government spending is always suspect in conservative Lancaster, Ohio. But when a serious illness forced her mother into a nursing home, Karen Parrish became an advocate of expanding federal aid for those with long-term illnesses.
It really puts your back against a wall, and it's very frightening. You know, we had a lot of sleepless nights.
71% of the people we polled say the federal government should help cover nursing home costs. Bill and Karen Parrish have not been able to save for 8-year-old Ryan's college education on a policeman's salary. As the country loses blue-collar manufacturing jobs to foreign competition, the children of the new American family are under pressure.
If they don't get an education, their prospects are pretty bleak. They're going to be at jobs that have low wages and relatively few fringe benefits.
Almost 2/3 of the people we polled want the federal government to help those who can't afford it go to college. Overall, the poll found Americans want the government to help working people caught in a bind.
I think the country is beginning to develop a sense of guilt after 8 years of saying, I don't care. I feel good, and I don't care.
Federal help for middle-class workers is a popular idea, even though most of the people we polled did not think the poverty programs of the 60s worked.
And I have always worked, and my husband works hard, and my entire family works hard, and we just can't seem to get a leg up.
As George Bush presents his priorities tonight, there's evidence in this poll and elsewhere that the nation will respond to a very American idea, that their government, by the people, sometimes must act boldly for the people. Eric Ingberg, CBS News, Lancaster, Ohio.
And that's the CBS Evening News. Dan Rather reporting tonight from Washington. We'll be back at 9 Eastern Time for President Bush's speech and the Democratic response. Before that, we hope you'll watch 48 Hours about divorce. That'll be at 8, 7 Central Time. So see you along the trail here soon.
Victims of divorce, the battle that begins where marriage ends.
All I wanted to do is share my children's life.
48 Hours tonight.
This is CBS.
Dear Kate, couldn't wait to tell you how much I love the Forum. Retirement community living is great. My apartment is perfect. Plenty of room for my favorite things. The community itself is really beautiful. Dining here is like having our own private restaurant. The food is superb. And what a lifestyle. parties. I've made a lot of new friends here, but I still do my own thing, too. The Forum has 24-hour security and a health center, if I ever need it. Best of all, it's a rental retirement community. No entrance fees. This is just perfect for me.
The Forum is coming to the Memorial Galleria area, offering spectacular views. Model apartments are now open. Call 9...
Everybody. It was symbolic of being able to conquer defeat.